What if Obi-Wan turned to the dark side? We pick up with Master Yoda's funeral ceremony. Let's begin. The Jedi Order had reserved 500 Republica's highest floor for the entire night, 12-hour block, accounting for setup, ceremony, and the inevitable aftermath. The venue typically hosted senatorial unions and corporate mergers, a circular configuration now arranged for perhaps 50 attendees. Transparent steel panels formed the chamber's perimeter, floor to ceiling, each section rated for atmospheric breach contingencies, while offering unobstructed views of Coruscant's illuminated grid stretching to atmospheric limits in every direction. At 1800 hours, Coruscant's sun still dominated the western panels, while the city's automated illumination systems began their activation, natural light not yet surrendering to artificial. 3 concentric rings of Nerf leather chairs surrounded the central area, each successive ring positioned higher than the preceding, ensuring unobstructed sightlines regardless of occupant positioning. Near the entrance, catering droids had positioned crystalline decanters alongside the temporary bar setup, their contents catching the transitional light. The casket dominated the center, 3 meters of cortosis alloy with rhodium inlays along its edges, its mirrored surfaces reflecting the chamber. A mobile viewing platform with integrated steps had been positioned at the foot end, the wheeled unit designed for removal before the internal thermal systems activated at midnight, converting the entire structure to ceremonial ash within minutes. Inside, Master Yoda's form lay beneath a shroud of Mandalorian silk interwoven with rhodium threading, a detail his Force ghost had specified after manifesting during the Council's last budget meeting. 3 standard years had elapsed since Yoda's heart ceased function. The Council had frozen him in carbonite, stored in his quarters, while they searched for funeral funding that never materialized. The Order's discretionary accounts remained perpetually depleted, their contents diverted to what quarterly reports termed operational expenses and diplomatic initiatives, along with numerous garnishment orders from core world family courts. Each meeting produced the same conclusion: wait another quarter for the finances to recover. They never did. Yoda's Force ghost manifested with increasing frequency, initially indifferent, then insistent. When he threatened to leak the temple's accounting records to the Holonet, the Council found emergency funds within hours. Hence tonight's arrangements, financed by temporarily redirecting the Council's monthly recreational allocations. Jedi Grandmaster Skywalker, Supreme Chancellor Amidala, and their son Luke occupied 3 chairs, positioned in the innermost ring, their section of the arc facing the casket's broadside. 5 meters separated them from the surface, where their 3 forms were mirrored. Anakin's attention divided between the datapad's display and the chronometer in its upper corner. They had arrived early. Most guests wouldn't appear for hours. His elevation to Grandmaster had followed Yoda's forced resignation 17 years prior. Information about the former Grandmaster's Lunaweed operations on Kashyyyk had been leaked to the HoloNet, including footage of Wookiee laborers who'd apparently been promised paradise in exchange for plantation work. The Council had known of the operation, had profited from it, but Yoda ran the Enterprise and had structured the accounts to retain most profits himself. When the scandal broke, Yoda became the designated sacrifice, while the Council scrambled to contain the damage. They blamed everything on Yoda's age-related cognitive decline, even claiming that Chewbacca, a rogue botanist with agricultural delusions, had manipulated the ancient master into the scheme. The narrative held, reinforced by Chewbacca's staged death in a holding cell. Still, Yoda's immediate resignation proved necessary to maintain credibility. Anakin's ascension proved uncontested. The Clone Wars had made him the Republic's most recognizable Jedi, and his wife, who had secured her lifetime chancellorship through strategic eliminations and carefully documented senatorial indiscretions, ensured unanimous Senate support. Windu, who might have objected, had perished during the confrontation with Palpatine the year before. The Sith Lord suffering fatal brain damage from his own redirected lightning before suffocating in his oversized hood. To Anakin's left sat Luke, 18 years old. He and his twin sister deposited with Padme's sister Sola on Naboo minutes after birth and abandoned there. His parents had conquered the galaxy, achieved millennia of extended life through arcane rituals, then grown sufficiently bored to remember they had children. Their return to Naboo 3 years prior had yielded mixed results. His twins' response to their invitation contained 17 distinct expletives, and the phrase "deadbeat tyrants" repeated 9 times. Luke, absorbed in starship schematics and hyperdrive specifications since childhood, had never paid attention to politics or their parents' crimes, and remained too forgiving by nature to refuse their offer. They'd brought only him back to Coruscant, where he'd remained under their increasingly attentive supervision since. To Luke's left, Padme Amidala, Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, gazed at the vaulted ceiling's acoustic dampeners while balancing her ceremonial headdress, 3 kilograms of burnished bronzium and electrum filigree. Mon Mothma's distinctive tone carried over the ambient conversation near the entrance. Padme turned, spotting the senator's arrival. "Hold this," she announced, placing the headdress on Luke's head before rising. Within seconds, she'd crossed half the chamber, leaving Luke wearing the ornamental headdress that transformed his reflection in the casket's surface into something gloriously ridiculous. Balance became an immediate concern. He removed the heavy headdress, setting it on Padme's vacant chair, then returned to studying the reflection that had just lost one of its 3 subjects. Anakin looked like he was still in his late 20s, the same temporal suspension affecting his wife, neither showing their true age. Luke examined the discrepancy. His parents had discovered some method to sidestep biological inevitabilities, and neither seemed inclined to share the mechanics. 3 years of evasive answers had worn through patience. Luke turned to face Anakin directly, exhaustion coloring his tone. "Okay, what the f***?" Anakin's thumb paused mid-swipe. Can you put that down?" Anakin's index finger found the power button on the datapad's upper right edge. Luke caught only the screen dimming to black as Anakin lowered the device to his lap, still gripping it with both hands. Whatever had been displayed, something about odds and racing, vanished before he could read it properly. Anakin's gaze remained fixed on the reflection ahead. "What?" Luke gestured toward their reflection. "I want an explanation for this." "That's a mirror. Light hits surface, bounces back. Can I look at my datapad now, Your Majesty?" "That's not a mirror, that's a screen." Luke indicated the device's frame. "See the cameras lining it?" Anakin glanced at the supposed mirror's frame, noting the small indentations along its perimeter. That's an odd design choice. Sharp eye. I'm sure you know how cameras... How are you not aging?" Anakin finally turned to face Luke. "Plenty of sleep, clean diet, and exercise." He delivered it with complete neutrality. When Luke's jaw tensed in response, the corner of Anakin's mouth twitched upward, just enough to confirm he was enjoying this, before he returned his attention to the datapad. "You're a lying..." Luke paused, frustration warring with his natural restraint. "Deadbeat." Anakin didn't look up from the datapad, fingers swiping through what appeared to be a pod racing betting interface. A soft laugh escaped him. "Keep talking to me like that, and I'll slap you around in front of all these girls. You want that?" The threat came straight from some holodrama, though Anakin's delivery carried more amusement than menace. "What girls? There's nobody here except a bunch of Jedi throwing up all over the place." Anakin reclined, datapad positioned over his face. "Hey, show some respect. They are the Grabvine Gateway pod racing odds demanded attention. They are the..." Luke's hand darted toward the device. Anakin shifted it left, then right, then behind his head, each movement preceding Luke's attempts by milliseconds. The Grandmaster deactivated the screen again, setting the device on his chair's right armrest, away from Luke's reach. He folded his hands across his stomach, gesturing with his head toward the viewing platform's steps. "Why don't you go take a photo with Yoda's corpse or something instead of bothering me? Chancellor said he had several diseases that killed him, and I shouldn't go near." Luke's delivery was flat, mechanical, immediately shutting down the deflection attempt. "Now can we get back to why you look 28? Anakin's exhale measured 3 seconds. "In public, call us our names, at least, Luke. It's embarrassing when people hear." Strange complaint, Luke thought. The news hollows had taught him what to call them before he'd learned to walk. Chancellor and General, the only names the anchors ever used. That's who they were. Other children had mothers and fathers. He and his sister had 2 titles that appeared in news broadcasts. Neither corrected him during 15 years of sporadic calls. Now, 3 years into their sudden parenthood experiment, they decided it mattered. "You know what else is strange? You and Amidala, the name required effort. Not aging. How are you doing it? Force ritual? Mass sacrifice? What?" "Told you. Good diet, regular cardio." Luke's focus drifted to middle distance. "It's because my midichlorian count is low, isn't it? I can't do this, and that's why you won't tell me." Anakin's head snapped toward Luke. Luke turned to meet his eyes. He knew that particular expression had triggered it enough times over 3 years with variations of the same theory. "Say midichlorian count one more time and I'll cut your hand off with a lightsaber." The words carried no real threat, just the usual exasperation from years of the same argument. Since learning his count registered around 20,000 compared to Anakin's 27, Luke had transformed the numbers into some kind of galactic ranking system. Anakin's hand found Luke's shoulder, then shook him slightly. This has nothing to do with midichlorian counts. Your mother's count wouldn't even qualify for temple admission. Barely scraped 9,000 before we... Well, look at her now. And Yoda? Anakin's grip tightened. Lower count than you, but I watched him flip an entire club upside down once. 3 stories rotating in midair, because they refused Jedi entry. Kept it spinning for 40 seconds. I couldn't do that. Really? Yes, really. Midichlorian count doesn't matter as much as you think. This is why I don't tell you anything. You take away the wrong lessons. Luke's shoulders remained slumped, gaze fixed on nothing. Anakin's left arm stayed draped over his son's shoulder, searching for something to lift his mood. The crash came from beyond the concentric rings of seats. Anakin turned toward the entrance where Master Kenobi had emerged from the refresher, his trajectory toward the bar interrupted by a decorative luminary. Crystalline fragments scattered across polished flooring, while Kenobi steadied himself against the nearest surface, examining the destroyed fixture with intense concentration. Anakin jostled Luke's shoulder. "Look over there." Luke followed his gesture toward the drunk master, stumbling through funeral decorations. "While we can't reveal our maybe slightly more complicated skincare routine just yet, I will tell you how Obi-Wan turned to the dark side." "The what?" Anakin squeezed Luke's shoulder, leaning in conspiratorially. "Exactly. You're going to love this. It involves our friend Dexter, some criminals, and a very special recipe." He waited until Luke's eyes turned to him, curiosity breaking through the dejection. Anakin's voice dropped, settling into the rhythm of memory. A long time ago, 23 years to be specific, in an entertainment district, not too far from where we are. The entertainment district's commerce blazed across the hull of their unregistered speeder, neon cascading from storefronts, dimensional dancers looping through captured performances, gaming establishment marquees scrolling winner announcements, while Anakin tracked Obi-Wan's deteriorating navigational commands toward a rooftop below. His master directed their descent between swigs from a bottle thrust out the passenger window, the other hand indicating the landing vector with diminishing accuracy. "Are you going to tell me why we're here?" Padawan Skywalker asked. Obi-Wan had dragged him from sleep at 0100 hours, and now, approaching 0200, Anakin still had no explanation for this nocturnal excursion. "Hold on, Anakin. I will explain once we land." The speeder met permacrete, landing struts extending and locking into place. Obi-Wan continued drinking while Anakin powered down the engines, the bottle tilting higher with each swallow. The canopy retracted with a pneumatic hiss, and immediately the district's atmosphere invaded the luxury speeder's climate-controlled interior. Grease from 100 food vendors, synthetic pheromones from the pleasure houses, ozone from the neon displays, all of it carried on air 15 degrees warmer than the cabin's regulated environment. Anakin climbed out while Obi-Wan struggled with his door mechanism. The establishment's rooftop stretched perhaps 40 meters square, a few faint landing burns visible in the permacrete. Old marks, nothing recent. Plastic refuse littered the surface. Wind carried debris from the district below, some bags sun-bleached to transparency, others still bearing faded vendor logos. More accumulated against the low parapet's inner edge, caught mid-escape, the wind unable to lift them the final meter to freedom. No maintenance droids operated up here. No security cameras tracked the corners. A single service door stood across from where they'd landed, its access panel dark. Anakin stepped back from the luxury four-seater, noting the bags piled in the rear compartment where passengers should sit. Whatever Obi-Wan had packed before summoning him to the temple hangar an hour ago remained unknown. Every question during the trip meeting the same response: when we get there. The district stretched ahead, uniform rooftops broken by holograms rising like phantoms between buildings. Anakin noted the financial sector's monoliths kilometers distant, their surfaces alive with stock tickers and corporate messaging in letters 20 meters tall. Obi-Wan's boots finally met rooftop, the master pausing to stretch, both arms extended skyward, the empty bottle gripped in one hand, inverted above his head to confirm not a drop remained. Satisfied with its emptiness, he launched it in a trajectory that disappeared into the maze of platforms and walkways below, hopefully missing any pedestrians. He turned to Anakin, steadying himself with one hand on the speeder's hull. A deep yawn overtook Obi-Wan, head tilting back, eyes squeezing shut, the exhausted gesture lasting several seconds. Anakin watched his master's whole body participate in the yawn, and within moments felt the inevitable pull himself. "So Anakin, I received word from one of my agents in the area. Dexter?" "Shut up, Anakin, you don't know that." Kenobi delivered this with the conviction of someone whose agents operated through encrypted channels and dead drops, not a four-armed fry cook who sent poorly coded messages through public HoloNet posts for daily specials. So Anakin, my agent told me that Cad Bane and his filthy associates are finally here on our Coruscant. 3 years of contempt lived in that name. Ki-Adi-Mundi's investigation into a Ryloth trafficking ring had recovered body cam footage back then. 17 minutes of the Duros criminal adjusting his hat brim between every sentence, speaking at half speed like dialogue processing through malfunctioning vocal modulators. Obi-Wan had subjected Anakin to multiple viewings, dissecting each theatrical gesture with visceral disgust. The way Bane would pause mid-sentence for effect, the practiced head tilts, the deliberate slowness that substituted for actual menace. "So, are we going to arrest them?" Anakin asked. "No, Anakin. We have to teach these scumbags a lesson." The words slurred together at the edges. These idiots throw on ridiculous costumes, drop their voices 3 octaves, suddenly think they're dangerous, think they're at our level, Anakin. His finger jabbed toward the establishment below. "They believe they can fight Jedi, Anakin, grown bold enough to operate in our capital, conducting their trafficking business like we don't exist." The rage multiplied through alcohol, a familiar pattern Anakin had observed across 8 years. Obi-Wan's hatred for non-Force sensitives who affected threatening personas through cosmetic choices and vocal modulation had deep roots. Obi-Wan circled from the passenger side, around the speeder's nose, toward the rear compartment. Anakin drifted back in that direction, converging with his master at the vehicle's rear. His master fumbled with the locking mechanism twice before it recognized his thumbprint. The door swung upward, revealing bags Obi-Wan had packed before their departure. "So what do you want to do, Master?" "I hate these edgy motherfuckers, Anakin. Walking around with their collars turned up, standing in shadows waiting for someone to notice them. Pathetic. We must kill them and send a message to these scum that no matter how many knives they got shoved up their exhaust ports, they can't do shit to a Jedi, that they should never cross a Jedi." Obi-Wan hauled an equipment bag from the compartment, its weight suggesting considerable contents. He crouched beside it, yanking the seal strip. Dark firefighter suits emerged, Coruscant emergency response, Series 4 protective gear with integrated atmospheric processors. "Here, throw this over your robes." He tossed one of the suits toward Anakin. "We must disguise ourselves. Best we don't make it look like Jedi did what we're about to do." "Then how will they know not to cross Jedi?" Kenobi paused, one leg already in the firefighter suit. The question lingered for 3 seconds, before his fingers snapped, the gesture carrying the satisfaction of sudden inspiration. "We'll carve the Order's symbol on their foreheads, Anakin." He delivered it like he'd been planning this detail for weeks. "Can't prove shit with that, but they'll know who did it." He stepped into the second leg, pulling the jumpsuit up before threading his arms through the sleeves. The material concealed his belt entirely, lightsaber included. Anakin recognized the protocol. This would be a no-saber operation. Obi-Wan had articulated the philosophy years ago. The Force operated through channels beyond judicial comprehension, and when bureaucratic structures threatened to constrain its will through arrests or investigations, anonymity became necessity. The Force's instruments couldn't fulfill their purpose from holding cells. Tonight would follow that protocol. No lightsabers, no Jedi signatures, just the Force correcting imbalances through untraceable conduits. Anakin mirrored the process, the protective gear covering his robes. Both secured their helmets last, the visor's transparent steel panels reflecting outward while providing clear sight lines from within. "What are we using for this?" Anakin asked. The question's meaning was obvious. When lightsabers remained sheathed, the Force simply redirected its will through cruder channels. Obi-Wan retrieved another bag, smaller, extracting palm-sized devices, which he distributed across his suit's various pockets. These, if needed. Finally, he produced 2 expandable batons, CSF issue, tossing one to Anakin. He extended his own, testing the weight with experimental swings. "Yeah, we'll use these." The baton collapsed with a mechanical click. Obi-Wan slipped his into a thigh pocket. Anakin did the same. Anakin noted the absence of any blade suitable for carving symbols into flesh. How exactly Obi-Wan planned to carve Jedi symbols remained unclear, but experience had taught him that his master operated on inspiration and alcohol in equal measure. Best not to ask. Whatever happened would happen. Obi-Wan led the way across the rooftop toward the service door. The lock mechanism yielded to Force manipulation, internal components rotating without authorization. The upper levels offered standard security, 3 guards between them and the nearest turbo lift. Each met unconsciousness through Force application, the Jedi careful to avoid surveillance zones, The turbolift descended 10 floors without incident. Ground level, according to Obi-Wan's mysterious source, housed the serious business transactions. The turbolift doors parted onto an austere lobby. No crowds, no mingling patrons. The ground floor wasn't designed for socializing. Private rooms and sealed booths for business, nothing more. Two security officers approached immediately, hands moving toward weapons. Obi-Wan's suggestions arrived first. Attack each other. They complied, fists connecting with faces. More security emerged from stations. Shoot your partner. Punch the wall until you break your hand. Run full speed into that pillar. Each command met instant obedience. Bodies accumulated. A human male remained behind the reception counter. Late 40s by appearance, too scared to move. Stylus suspended over reservation data. Obi-Wan approached, leaning across the counter. The receptionist's own terrified expression stared back from the firefighter helmet's visor. "Where are those edgelords holding their meeting?" Obi-Wan asked. "You know the ones, sitting in shadows for dramatic effect, waiting for arguments to break out so they can slam their fist down and deliver some rehearsed line. The type who executes someone, then turn real slow asking, 'Anyone else have objections?'" The man's expression conveyed complete incomprehension. "What?" Obi-Wan's helmet turned slowly toward Anakin, his hand gesturing at the receptionist. "This mother..." Anakin stood there, his own visor reflecting the lobby's harsh lighting, radiating exhausted annoyance through his posture alone. Obi-Wan turned back to the receptionist. "The one with the stupid hat. Blue skin? Tubes coming out of his face? Duros who talks like he's underwater? Where is he?" The receptionist's incomprehension remained absolute. Obi-Wan's helmet tilted back, the gesture of someone reaching their limit. "For fuck's sake!" He extended his fingers toward the employee's temple. Mental intrusion revealed recent memories. A blue-skinned figure in an oversized hat, companions dressed like they'd raided a theatrical warehouse, all proceeding toward a door marked "Restricted Access. Stay out." The receptionist had watched them enter but hadn't followed. The memories ended at the threshold. The man collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Following the mental pathway extracted from those memories, East Wing, third corridor, dead-end storage with single access point, Obi-Wan moved. "Let's kill these edgy sons of bitch," he muttered. Anakin followed, maintaining tactical awareness while his master charged ahead. Obi-Wan's focus had narrowed to a single point, the prospect of confronting criminals who thought dramatic presentation substituted for actual combat prowess. The thrill of dismantling their theatrical pretensions consumed him entirely. Peripheral concerns, cameras, reinforcements, extraction routes had ceased registering. Anakin compensated, tracking motion sensors, noting structural weak points, calculating contingencies his master would ignore until needed. The corridor ahead filled with security responding to the activity. Anakin's suggestions flowed efficiently. Guards turned weapons on each other, confusion preceding compliance. Obi-Wan had extended his CSF baton, moving with anticipation that bordered on joy. His first strike caved in a weak-way skull, the impact driving through helmet and bone. He vaulted over the falling corpse, spinning midair to bring the weapon down on another guard's crown. Each connection dropped targets instantly. Temple, throat, knee, followed by skull. Blaster bolts erupted from both ends of the corridor. The Jedi held them stationary with the Force, dozens of energy projectiles frozen in space like a lethal constellation. A gesture sent them reversing into their origins. Guards collapsed, smoking holes where armor failed. Obi-Wan moved between the remaining guards, the baton reversing direction mid-swing to catch those behind him. Padawan and Master worked through 17 more guards before reaching their destination. The reinforced doors from the receptionist's memory stood before them. "Restricted access. Stay out," stamped across the durasteel. Obi-Wan's baton collapsed with a click, disappearing into his thigh pocket. He faced the sealed entrance, both palms extended. His hatred for theatrical criminals, every rehearsed line, every practiced head tilt, every self-important pause, channeled through the Force into the durasteel. Nothing moved. The doors remained sealed while his contempt built, concentrated into molecular assault on the locking mechanisms within. Metal groaned inside the frame, internal components compressing, warping under invisible pressure. Then, catastrophic failure. The doors shot apart along their tracks, slamming into their housing with enough velocity to embed the panels 3 centimeters deep. Every internal mechanism crushed to powder. Blaster fire erupted instantly. Criminals inside had been waiting. The bolts streaked toward the opening. Anakin's hands rose, fingers spread, catching the energy projectiles in suspension. Obi-Wan launched through the doorway while Anakin redirected the frozen bolts into their sources. His master moved between 20 guards like liquid violence. 3 engaged simultaneously, each receiving different flavors of anatomical rearrangement. An elbow reversed a knee joint, sending its owner screaming. A palm strike caved in a ribcage while his boot found another's jaw, teeth scattering like shrapnel. One guard's femur snapped under a kick before Obi-Wan's fist drove through his partner's throat. Anakin remained near the entrance, gestures minimal, almost bored. A finger flick, cervical vertebrae separated. A lazy hand wave. 3 guards' necks rotated past structural limits. Another gesture, spinal cords severed in sequence. 9 dropped without Anakin moving from his position. Obi-Wan handled the remaining 11. The final guard expired with a wet gasp, ribs driven through lung tissue. Obi-Wan delivered another heel strike to the corpse's temple, bone deforming under impact. Master. Anakin gestured toward the chamber steps. They're done. Let's find who we came for. Obi-Wan's boot connected once more with dead flesh before he straightened, chest heaving beneath the firefighter suit. The chamber extended deeper than expected. The entrance they'd destroyed opened into the establishment's storage hall. Industrial shelving rose 4 meters high, creating narrow corridors between towers of liquor crates and imported spirits. Life signatures pulsed from somewhere deeper in the maze of inventory. Obi-Wan charged into the first corridor, Anakin following at a measured pace. They navigated 3 turns through the towering shelves before emerging into the hall's dead end, a cleared space where the shelving terminated against reinforced walls. 20 meters away, the criminals had positioned themselves in this corner, weapons trained on the single approach through the storage maze. No other exits. They'd chosen their defensive position, knowing anyone coming for them would have to funnel through this bottleneck. Cad Bane stood at the front of the group, hat tilted down, face completely obscured. Behind him, Aurra Singh's rifle aimed steady at the opening. Shahan Alama, Robonino, Hondo Ohnaka, and his Weequay pirates formed a defensive semicircle, every barrel pointed at the bottleneck. They fired the instant the Jedi cleared the shelving. Obi-Wan's hand swept left, then right, the bolts veering into crates and walls, bottles exploding in sprays of alcohol and glass. He raised both hands in mock surrender, still walking forward. We just want to talk. Anakin walked in to stand beside his master. Obi-Wan was preparing to deliver some mocking observation about their defensive formation when Bane's hat began its slow, theatrical tilt upward. The brim rose by degrees, revealing blue features in calculated increments, and whatever mockery Obi-Wan had planned evaporated, consumed by pure rage at this edgy display. Obi-Wan's baton flew to his hand, extending as his fingers closed around it. The weapon immediately launched across the chamber, trajectory precise. Bane's crotch met Durasteel before the Duros could form a single word. The instant the baton left his hand, Obi-Wan launched himself forward, the firefighter suit's bulk doing nothing to slow his force-enhanced leap. Anakin followed a heartbeat behind, both Jedi soaring across the distance as blaster fire erupted below them. They landed in the midst of chaos. Pirates scattered in every direction. Hondo grabbed Aurra by the shoulders, shoving her toward Anakin, while scrambling for cover. The sniper stumbled forward. Anakin's fingers twitched in a lazy gesture. Her head spun backward, cervical vertebrae separating. Her final sight, the coward who'd thrown her running away as she fell face first. Her body hadn't hit floor before Anakin turned toward Hondo. A gesture bent his spine backward, like a book folded wrong. Shahan Alama fired 3 shots, each frozen mid-flight, before reversing into his chest. Robonino tried activating his shock systems, but found his own electricity redirected inward. More engaged, Anakin dealt with all easily, necks rotated, organs ruptured, bones shattered. He finally turned to find Obi-Wan had cleared out his side of the room, bodies scattered around him. The Master was beating Bane with his baton as the Duros tried crawling away, his elaborate hat nowhere to be seen. Bane managed to kick the baton aside and struggled to his feet, hand moving toward a concealed weapon under his sleeve. But this only enraged Obi-Wan further. A force pull yanked Bane forward. Obi-Wan's knee met his face, driving him to the floor. The Master grabbed Bane's right leg and bent it forward over his knee. The crack echoed through the chamber. Anakin almost looked away at the sound. Obi-Wan planted his boot on Bane's face and continued his taunts. Go ahead. Say something gravelly and slow, you stupid f***. We'll be paralyzed with fear, right, Anakin? Bane's response came garbled. Obi-Wan yanked off his firefighter helmet, tossing it aside before gripping the breathing tubes protruding from Bane's face. He pulled them free, each tube sliding from its surgical port. The Master held them up toward Anakin, waving them like trophies. So scary, Anakin. Look at these terrifying modifications. Bane tried to speak. The words emerged in that same gravelly rasp. You don't... Still with that voice. Obi-Wan's boot found Bane's shoulder, flipping him onto his stomach. The Master grabbed him by the collar, dragging the Duros toward the nearest structural support. A reinforced step rising from the floor. He positioned Bane's mouth against the edge. Let's see how intimidating you sound without teeth. His boot connected with the back of Bane's skull. The impact drove upper jaw into durasteel. Enamel scattered across the floor, bouncing like tiny hailstones. Anakin pressed fingers to the bridge of his nose. Obi-Wan grabbed Bane's shoulder, turning him over. The Duros lay unconscious, upper teeth gone, blood pooling beneath his slack jaw. Go ahead, threaten us with that voice again. Obi-Wan delivered another kick to the unconscious form. Master, he's out. Can we kill him and leave? Anakin asked, the words carrying bone-deep weariness. No, Anakin. He must pay for his insult to the Order. But first, we must carve the Order's symbol on their faces. Anakin surveyed the carnage. With what? Obi-Wan looked around, spotted some throwing knives near a dead pirate, and grabbed one. He walked over to Hondo's corpse. The VK's spine remained bent backward from Anakin's earlier gesture. Obi-Wan extended his hand. The corpse rose into the air, gravity pulling it into a vertical position, head up, feet dangling. He let it drop. Hondo landed face up. Hold his head steady, Obi-Wan instructed, kneeling beside the body. Just use the Force, Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan shot him an irritated glance, but complied. His fingers extended. Invisible pressure locked Hondo's skull in position. The first incision wandered immediately. What should have been a straight line curved into something resembling a child's attempt at calligraphy. The master paused, studying his work with obvious frustration. The Order's symbol is... He gestured vaguely with the blade. Wings and a light thing. It's a blade with something around it, Anakin corrected, then frowned. They stared at each other for a moment, neither entirely certain. Anakin yanked off the firefighter suit with irritated movements and pulled the datapad from his belt, fingers swiping through menus. The image finally materialized, symmetrical wings flanking a central blade of light. He angled the screen toward his master. Obi-Wan studied the symbol for 3 seconds before attempting to recreate it in flesh. The blade slipped against the skin's resistance, each line wandering from its intended path. The wings became lopsided triangles. The central blade curved like a broken finger. After 12 attempts, the design resembled abstract art more than sacred insignia. Mother... Obi-Wan hurled the knife across the chamber. It embedded in a wall panel. Rising, he drove his boot into Hondo's face, snapping the corpse's head sideways. Let's just write, "The Jedi were here," on the wall with blood or something, Anakin suggested. Are you insane? Obi-Wan rounded on him. That's the most edgy thing imaginable. What's next, Anakin? Should I change my name to Darth Darthius? Wear all black and sit in the dark all day, writing poetry about how light disgusts me? Stand on rooftops staring at f***ing nothing? Laugh along with people, then make some theatrically angry expression the second they turn away? Get facial scars, then make up different origin stories for each one? Is that what you want, Anakin, for me to become an edgelord? Anakin stared at his master, and carving symbols into faces isn't edgy. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by corpses. Obi-Wan glanced down at Hondo. The corpse's face annoyed him. His boot connected again. Let's just leave him, Anakin said. We'll have other chances. Next time we'll bring a branding iron or something. Obi-Wan grunted, chest still heaving from his outburst. After a moment, he nodded and moved toward Bane's unconscious form, hoisting the Duros over his shoulder. Okay, what the f***? Anakin asked, watching his master adjust Bane's weight. It's a surprise. He gestured with the Force, pulling his firefighter helmet from where he'd thrown it. Let's go. Put your mask back on. Anakin, agitated, grabbed his helmet and shoved it on, not bothering with the rest of the suit. Obi-Wan secured his own helmet, Bane's limp form draped over his shoulder like a sack of supplies. They made their way back through the establishment, up to the roof. At the speeder, Obi-Wan dumped Bane in the rear compartment before climbing into the passenger seat. Cocoa Town, he directed. Dex's diner. Obi-Wan connected his datapad to the speeder's audio system, scrolling through his playlist. Classic from the Old Republic era, he announced, queuing up something with aggressive percussion and synthetic beats. Their speeder lifted off, hull reflecting neon as it arced through Coruscant's vertical maze. 12 minutes of the music blaring through the cabin as they headed toward Cocoa Town's industrial sprawl. The speeder touched down behind the diner. Before Anakin could ask why they were here, Obi-Wan had already vaulted from the passenger seat and yanked open the rear door on his side. Dex can make good use of this worthless scumbag. Obi-Wan hauled Bane out. He's been wanting to try some new recipes. Anakin sat in the pilot's seat with a bewildered expression, processing what his master had just said. The music continued blaring from the speakers, while Coruscant's 3 a.m. traffic streams flowed overhead, oblivious to the scene in the alley below. Anakin fell silent, letting the words hang in the air. He watched Luke's face, waiting. What did he mean? Try some new recipes? Luke finally asked. Well, Luke, I was exhausted and left Obi-Wan to his whatever he was planning. A few days later, when I saw him at the temple, he mentioned a new video on Dex's holosite, titled Gangster O Blue. Accompanying it was a detailed recipe and a cooking holo which featured a certain blue creature. He cooked him? Understanding arrived in stages. First the words, then their meaning. Alive, from what I heard. A nervous laugh escaped Luke. That's psychotic and fucked up on several levels. Then why are you laughing? Did this really happen? Luke bit down, suppressing the nervous response. Anakin picked up the datapad from the armrest, making several taps with a smile spreading across his face. Finding what he wanted, he held the screen up to Luke's face. The video loaded, Dexter standing beside Bane's unconscious form, explaining in his jovial manner, "Now, the key is keeping them alive until the last moment, prevents the meat from spoiling, gives it that fresh quality. Same principle as boiling mud crabs alive, really." Luke's face drained of color. Anakin pulled the datapad away. Yoda even tried the Gangster O Blue. He didn't like it though. Wanna know why? Luke stared, stunned. Said the meat was too edgy. Anakin scrolled down, showing the review beneath the recipe from Grandmaster Supreme Yoda 77. Eat this. I could not. Too edgy, the meat was. Anakin doubled over, laughing. Luke turned to stare at Obi-Wan across the room, then back at the casket. Padme noticed the laughter from across the hall. She downed what remained in her crystalline glass, plucked Mon Mothma's from the senator's hand mid-conversation, and finished that too. She grabbed 2 fresh glasses from a passing service droid, crystal shot glasses holding the same amber spirits she and Mon had been drinking, and speed walked over. What's so funny? Padme asked, now standing beside them. She extended the glasses toward them. Luke, who'd never developed a taste for alcohol, grabbed both before Anakin could react. Gangster O Blue required immediate liquid amnesia. He drained the first in one go. The second followed immediately, then his eyes watered as the spirits hit. A cough escaped, then another, his hand moving to his throat. Anakin laughed, reaching over to pat Luke's back between his shoulder blades. Padme folded her arms, lips pressed together to suppress her own laugh. Should have nursed it. Luke cleared his throat, finally recovering, eyes still watery, which only made Anakin laugh harder. Shut up, Luke managed, smacking Anakin's shoulder. Still grinning, Anakin turned to Padme. Padme, Luke was just telling me how your headdress looks weird, and that I'm the better parent. What? No, I never said... Padme smacked the back of Luke's head, placed her headdress back on, and sat down. You ungrateful little shit. How rude. Now I'm never telling you why we're not aging. I didn't say that. We were talking about Obi-Wan's mobster stew, Luke protested. I don't believe you, Padme said primly, though her eyes sparkled with amusement. Seeing Luke's distress, she relented. Okay, tell me about this mobster stew. He was telling me how Ben turned to the dark side and cooked this guy for being edgy, because that's disrespectful to the Jedi. Oh, that, Padme said. This is why we didn't send you or your ungrateful sister to the temple. Anakin's organization is filled with psychopaths. Anakin turned to Luke. Yeah, Luke, unlike Padme's organization, which is filled with... He glanced at Padme, who was already looking away. Filled with normal, sane individuals. No psychopaths there. Padme turned back to face Anakin. At least we don't deal with the mentally deranged by giving them paid vacations, Luke. It's called therapeutic sabbatical for force realignment, Anakin corrected with mock seriousness. Very different from a vacation. It's a philosophical journey of redemptive introspection. Padme leaned back, her gaze drifting upward. Sure, if you say so, General. Luke sat between them, completely lost. So, Obi-Wan went on vacation after killing that guy? Oh wait, I didn't get to how he turned to the dark side, did I? Anakin said, settling into his Grandmaster voice. Initially it was just a knight engaging in unsanctioned enforcement activities. These incidents rarely merit documentation when it's just some knight. But then Yoda got involved. After he tried the Gangster O Blue and left his review, suddenly there was broader institutional concern. Can't have the Grandmaster participating in culinary experiments of that nature without raising questions. Padme tilted her head, recognizing the administrative sophistication in what Anakin was about to reveal. So, Yoda did what he'd been doing for centuries. Anakin continued. The Order maintains this particular document, Form 77B, Declaration of Darkside Corruption. File it, claim your actions occurred under Darkside influence, and if the Council approves, you're exempt from any disciplinary proceedings. The form reassigns agency entirely. Your actions become the Darkside's actions. You are merely the conduit. can't prosecute an instrument for how it was wielded. Luke saw where this was heading and stayed quiet. So after Yoda's form received approval within the hour, naturally, he told Obi-Wan to file the same paperwork. Both got their 3-week dispatch to Ashla for purification protocols. Full pension maintained throughout their... Anakin glanced at Padme. Therapeutic sabbatical. Meditation, Luke, Padme said, making air quotes around the word. And that, Anakin concluded, settling back in his chair, is how Obi-Wan first utilized Form 77B and, administratively speaking, turned to the dark side.